Communication skills, presented by Ramone Reid, Michail Allette, and Ruston Westcott. Communication skills are some of the most easily overlooked soft skills that anyone and everyone can develop. These soft skills range from active listening, paying attention to body language, asking questions that build rapport, and being flexible or adaptable. How do you communicate? Are you more of a take charge kind of person, delegating work or tasks to teammates? Do you prefer to sit back and analyze the project or situation? Do you tend to dominate conversations, not letting others voice their opinions, whether you realize it or not? Being able to recognize how you communicate your ideas and whether or not you are communicating effectively takes a certain amount of internal reflection. Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information by speaking, writing, or using some other medium. Each has its own subtleties. With speaking comes body language, tonal inflection, displaying of emotion, and facial expressions. Writing lacks that ability to see the person, hear their voice and their emotion, which adds a completely different way of broadcasting your ideas. Add in the new medium of technology, and you have many new ways to communicate. Social media with pictures, videos, status updates, and more. Texting, where you can add emojis to help transmit what your emotional state is. Or even video websites like YouTube, where you can post videos of your ideas, gripes, hopes, or even tutorials. How do you think you communicate? Is this something you have even thought about? Do you want to improve your communication skills in and out of the workplace? Having good communication skills could mean the difference between being a regular employee and being in a management position. Communication skills is one of the most sought-after soft skills that you can develop. Companies host or send employees to training classes for developing this skill, for customer relations, inter-team cooperation, and interdepartmental communication. An example is a CAD designer trying to pass on a part design to a machine shop. The CAD designer needs to know how to transfer a computer design to a real-world part, and if his expectations are unrealistic, or if they don't understand the process for machining a part, the designer will find it hard to communicate with the machinist. Beyond the workroom, improving your soft skills will strengthen all types of relationships. Improving your skills at communicating will become an important task if you plan on getting promoted.
Alright, so there's 4 different types of communication styles. There's the analytical, the intuitive, the functional, and the personal. No one communication style is really better than the other. However, picking the wrong style for a particular audience, whether it's one person or 1,000, could shut down listening and engagement of the audience, which can spell trouble. Learning how to build flexibility around your preferred style will allow others to more successfully hear the important things you need to communicate. Analytical communicators are people who tend to focus on the hard data and real numbers. They like very specific language and dislike vague language. For example, when someone tells you sales are positive, an analytical communicator is likely to think, what does positive even mean? 5.2% or 8.9%? Give me a number. And those with an analytical communication style often have little patience for lots of feeling and emotional words in communication. One big plus of having an analytical communication style is that because you like communication to be fairly unemotional, you're often able to look at issues logically and dispassionately. This means others tend to see you as having high levels of data and informational expertise. The potential downside of having an analytical communication style is that you may strike certain people as being cold or unfeeling. For example, when interacting with people like personal communicators who tend to like warm and chatty personal relationships, it's possible for analytical communicators to get irritated and terse. This sometimes has negative political and relational consequences. Intuitive communicators are people who would rather look at the big picture. They avoid getting into details and would rather a broad overview of the overall picture. For example, some people like functional communicators will tell you things step by step. They're starting with A, then go to B, then C, then D, then E, and etc. But this can drive an intuitive communicator nuts. You'd rather just jump straight to Z. One big plus of having an intuitive communication style is that your communication is quick and to the point. You don't get stalled by needing too many details, and you're comfortable with big ideas and out-of-the-box thinking. Because you're good with thinking big, you can also enjoy challenging convention. The potential downside of having an intuitive communication style is that you may not always have enough patience when you're in a situation that actually requires getting into the nitty-gritty detail, and you may risk missing an important point. Typically, intuitive communicators have the most difficulty dealing with functional communicators. Functional communicators are people who are very detail-oriented and procedural. They like well-thought-out plans and communicate things in a step-by-step fashion so that nothing gets missed. One big plus of having a functional communication style is that your communication generally hits all of the details and nothing gets missed. When you're on a team, people will often turn to you and be the implementer because they have confidence in your love and process and detail. And because you're focused on things like process and detail, you're the person who is typically asked to play the devil's advocate. The potential downside of having a functional communication style is that you may risk losing the attention of your audience, especially when you're talking to an intuitive communication audience. Personal communicators are people who tend to value emotional language and connection with others. You find value in assessing not just how people think, but how they feel. You tend to be a good listener and a diplomat. You can soothe over conflicts, and you're typically concerned with the health of your numerous relationships. One big plus of having a personal communication style is that your communication also allows you to build deep personal relationships with others. People will often turn to you as the glue that holds the group together. You're typically able to pick up vibes that others may miss because you're attuned to the emotional aspect of communication. The potential downside of having a personal communication style is that you may occasionally be derided as touchy-feely. For example, when dealing with an analytical communicators, it's possible for personal communicators to become exasperated and emotionally upset.
Engineers are more analytical by nature. This can put them at a disadvantage when it comes to communicating with people outside of engineering, let alone the technically challenged. Most engineers don't see themselves as a salesperson, and in the traditional sense, they aren't. However, engineers need to know how to sell their ideas. An engineer who can prepare and deliver a clear and concise message will be an asset to any team or company. This has become a glaring issue with the explosion of software apps for smartphones and tablets. Many of the programmers spend a lot of time isolated, trying to create an app to sell via their own startup or to a larger company, but are unable to sell the idea behind the application because they haven't spent any time developing their soft skills.
Teams are consisting more and more of mixed members. Not all engineering standards are global. One example of this is units of measurement. Failure to effectively communicate specifications can cause a team to encounter serious consequences. You may remember a few years ago when the Mars orbiter crashed because two different units of measurement were used. Cultural differences can be encountered with interpreting nonverbal signals such as body language, recognizing when or how to take coffee breaks, or even how fast or slowly the team is expected to work. A personal experience that I had with this area was with one of my old managers who was from India, and his personal space bubble was a lot smaller than what's common in the US. Understanding the differences in our cultures really helped me interact with them on a daily basis. Even if all team members are native English speakers, communication barriers can be encountered based on the version of English each member is accustomed to speaking. For example, you may call a carbonated drink soda and someone else may call it pop. Here are some tips to improve communication when dealing with a global engineering team. Establishing team norms that include direction on what to communicate, how to communicate, and when to communicate is a critical first step that must be taken before moving forward on the project at hand. Also, all team members should keep communications simple, concise, and to the point to avoid misinterpretations and loss in meaning. Dr. Albert Mehibran, author of Silent Messages, conducted several studies on nonverbal communication. He found that 7% of any message is conveyed through words, 38% through certain vocal elements, and 55% through non-verbal elements, such as facial expressions, gestures, or postures. So I found this to be really interesting that if that study is correct, 93% of our communication has nothing to do with what we're actually saying. Here are some tips to help improve your nonverbal communication skills. Make an appropriate amount of eye contact. Try to avoid looking at the ground and at objects around you. Facial expression. Make the appropriate facial expression for the tone of the conversation. If someone informs you of bad news, obviously you wouldn't want to smile. Tone of voice. You want your voice to be warm, project confidence, and be sincere. Body language and posture. You want to give the appearance that your body is relaxed, not stiff or immobile. Your shoulders should not appear tense or raised. And so on. Touch. This is a case-by-case thing based on the conversation that you're having and the relationship that you have with that person. Make sure that it's not unwanted. Intensity. Is your voice faint? Is it cool? Is it calm? Are you yelling? Timing. Are you laughing or crying at the wrong times in a conversation? Things like that.
With the technological boom of the late 20th century and early 21st century, a new platform for communication had been developed. Through email, businesses could send memos and company-wide updates without having to waste paper, but it also allowed people to send personal letters electronically, much faster than they formerly could. This meant that communication between people could be maintained despite distance. Then, with the introduction of cell phones and the ability to text, that communication delay of emails was shortened even more. With texting, an issue commonly encountered to this day is the attempt to read emotions from a message. Many times, this will lead to a miscommunication of something very simple and could lead to a dispute between partners, whether on a team or in a relationship. But with emojis, this problem has been slightly alleviated, with the smiley faces allowing you to help get the full message across with emotional context. As social media became commonplace, people were able to transmit their thoughts without filtering them first, and not just to a single recipient, but rather to the masses, for good or bad. Posting pictures, thoughts, quotes, and video clips for anyone to see and comment on is easier than ever. But is this free flow of posting effective at communicating? It can be, if used for more than trivial thoughts and activities of your daily life. Questions for the audience. What do you think is more important, what you say or how you say it? Why? How important is listening in communication? Has the development of the internet and social media caused a change in the way we communicate? Quality, quantity, style, etc. Can culture, gender, nationality, or social class have an effect on communication? How does communication skills affect your life in and out of the workplace?